Thanks so much.
Yep, sure.
May I start right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So hi everyone, this is Eugene and welcome to workshop 2. Before workshop 2, I'm gonna start questions for in poll everywhere. So I just sent the URL for the poll. So can you just access the poll, please? I just sent in the chat. So I'm gonna ask you guys questions right now. First of all, let's start it. So what's gonna be 1 plus 1? And they have a time limit, so just check it out in 5 seconds. The 1 plus 1 equals to 2 is just a math. And what's going to be the string 1 plus string 1? Yeah, it's string 1, 1 because the strings can be multiplied. And what's going to be 1 plus string 1? Yeah, it makes the error because it has different type of integer and string. And what's going to be string 1 multiplied 3? Strings can be multiplied by number, so it's string 111. And this is the all questions before we start. And let's get started. Oops. So, okay, let's get started. So before workshop 2, we did some quizzes. And welcome to MBSI Python Coding Workshop 2. Theme of today's workshop will be the data types and math. Main moderator will be me, Eugene, and Joshua, and nice to meet you guys. These slides are available under the slides folder, so you can review them if there's anything you need to revisit. So last week, we went over several programming concepts. First of all, string means the characters within quotation marks. If we write numbers with quotation marks, then the numbers can be read as a string too. We saw this example at the poll everywhere. So also strings cannot use the mathematical operators with a number like plus, minus, division, or modulo. And also we will learn mathematical operator today. So as you can see, print function is that takes data inside the brackets and displays it back to the user. Variable is a container that stores the data value. For input, as you can see the example, if you run input, it prompts to the user to input. However, if you print only X, it prints out only the input you wrote, not printing out the strings that inside of the brackets. Today's concept will be data type and the type function and math calculations. Third, updating variables, and fourth, errors. There are several different data types of Python. And what we'll cover today is float and integer that are under the numeric type. And also we will cover the strings too. I think most of you guys will know what's the integer. It's a whole number, the same as you guys learned in the math class. However, the float will be the new numeric type. They represent real numbers and are written with the decimal points dividing the integer and fractional parts. As you can see, you've all used plus, minus, multiplication, division to type an equation into Google search. So we won't spend a lot of time on much of that. As you can see, for floor division, we use double dashes. And look the example, if we use floor division, we find the quotient of the 25 divided by 7, and modulo is for the remainder, and power is for the exponent. Right of the two asterisks is the exponent. Do you look familiar? Yes, we had these questions before the workshop from Pool Everywhere. So as you can see, 1 plus 1 is integer type and outputs is 2. This is just a simple math. And string 1 plus string 1 makes string 1, 1 is the string concatenations. And 1 plus string 1 makes the error because it's different type of addition. And as you can see, string 1 multiplied by 3 is string 1, 1, 1. That makes like string can be multiplied by asterisk operator, and the asterisk operator means multiplications. And if you put the type function, you can, if you want to know type function, we can put type function. Remember, if you want to know the type of the object, you should type bracket inside of the print, unless otherwise Python will not return anything. For string Brian, it shows string with acronym str. For integers 74, it shows acronym int. For 2.3, it's decimal number, so Python will return float. So this is all examples I wrote. And I just really wanted to make the caution that, as you can see the presentation, remember that int bracket float rounds down. So that's a really important thing, and that's all. So now Joshua will explain the other half of workshop 2. Thank you. And Joshua will share the screen.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Joshua, and I'm taking you through the second part of this workshop. So quick recap from week 1. Variables are containers that store data. You guys know that? You guys remember that? Why do we want to update a variable though? Why not we just set it right the first time, right? What do you guys think? I'd like you guys to put your answers in the chat. I think my screen might be, is my screen showing? It should be, but it takes a while sometimes, there's a lag. But what do you guys think that we have to update a variable and not set it right the first time? I'd like to see some answers in the chat. Look at the chat box now. Yeah, okay, Erin says data sets. Yeah, that's exactly correct, because data sets often change. I'll move on. So yeah, we want to be able to update a variable because data sets change, right? A lot. Data sets change a lot. And just to give you a quick example, for example, let's say like we have 7 apples and we want to update the number of apples to fit the number of guests that we have. We would be able to update it in a way that is easy for us, so we can update the data sets and it would change every iteration of that variable that we have used in the future. So in other words, it also provides us with a quick access to these values when we assign it to a specific variable, and we can update it for each iteration of the variable. So for another example, we will consider a patient's diagnosis. So we can see that the previous diagnosis is pain in the lower right abdomen, and the doctor's diagnosis is typhlitis. I'm not familiar with that disease, but once a variable is assigned to a new value, it would no longer carry the old value. So for example, if the diagnosis is updated, the diagnosis will no longer carry the pain in the lower right abdomen value. In this case, the variable carries a string value. So when you print the variable, it'll print out the entire string itself. So if you say, like, for example, when you can see the print function here, it says print patient said diagnosis, so it print that out. If you were to go print patient said diagnosis after this entire line of code, you would get patient said it could be typhlitis, because remember, the diagnosis is updated, it will no longer carry its previous value. Another example of updating variables is a step counter. So I'll talk you guys through this one. Sometimes we want to update a variable autonomously, right? We want to update it quickly, and we don't want to have to add a fixed value every time we want to update that variable. So one useful method of updating a specific variable is a plus equal sign. That's a iteration operator. So for example, in the case of a step counter, we could use like an external monitor, and we could have the external monitor sort of count the number of steps, and it'll iterate the steps in the code so that the steps will show up on your screen, on your iPhone screen or whatever phone you have. So there's a little bit of code here that you don't have to be familiar with all this code, but all you have to be familiar with is the iteration operator. That's the focus of this slide. Move on to the next one. Okay, so how does iteration work? When we update a variable +1, for example, we're updating an old value to a new value. So we have one equal sign, and that equal sign is a assignment operator. Now that will be important later, but this is an assignment operator, one equal sign. And the way this is done is by referring to a new value of x. So whatever you put at the start will be a new value of x. It'll be the value that it will hold from now onwards, from this code onwards. And you put the equals, which is assignment operator, you put the old value of x +1. Now you don't have to necessarily do an old value of x +1. You could do like x equals to 2 for the new variable. But the reason why we're doing this is because we want to stress the point of we're trying to iterate x. So we're trying to count things by 1. We're trying to add them by 1. So you can see in this example on your right, it goes x equals to 0. When you print it, obviously the number will be 0. But when you go x equals to x +1, when you print x, the number is 1. So mathematically, this is a weird expression, right? X equals to x +1. Why does the computer even recognize x equals to x +1? And the reason is because programs, having the computer being able to recognize its iterations is actually very, very useful for us. Like you can see in the step counter and in our previous example. If not, we'd have no way to iterate +1. We'd have to type in like 2, 3, 4, 5 each and every single time we want to iterate a number or value. So like I said, the assignment operator had the one equal value, which you guys saw in the slide previously or 2 slides ago. There's a new operator which you guys will learn today, which is a comparison operator. It has a dual equal sign, and this comparison operator will be covered more under the Boolean topic later on. But for now, for the purposes of this slide, a comparison operator serves the purpose of comparing two things to return a true or false value. So a comparison operator only returns a true or false value. For example, typing 1 equals to 2 will yield false. So, however, when we assign a value, we're assigning it to a variable. So if you can see this Gordon Ramsay example, if you're assigning something, you're telling something to be something. So you're assigning a specific value to something. That's a one equal operator. Also, it's important to note that you can only assign integer strings and floats to a variable, but a variable can only be a string. So for example, you can't use 2 equals to 4. Python will not recognize that because 2 is an integer. You can use like x2 or x3 or something like that equals to 2 equals to 3, but you can only use a string as a variable. So to repeat myself, the comparison operator will compare two things. So for example, if I ask the computer for the picture on the right, you guys can see the old man walking on the right. If I ask the computer if the right side is darker than the left side, the computer will return a true value. Likewise, if I were to say 1 equals to 1, the computer will return the value true because it is a true statement, right? However, if I were to say 1 equals to 2, or if I were to say the sun is shining on the right side, the computer will return the value false, right? Because it is a false statement. So the plus minus operator that we saw briefly before is simply just a shorthand for the iteration, for a way to iterate your x or a way to iterate your variable. Now you can use a multiplication iteration. It doesn't have to be an addition iteration. You can also use a division iteration. So these are the different type of operators that you could use to iterate your variable. Okay, so errors, or what is an error? An error is basically a programming mishap that causes the code not to run as expected. We're all familiar with errors in our academic life. An error in programming occurs when we type something that the computer simply does not understand. Now, the useful thing about computer languages is that they actually give you specific type of error feedbacks. So it makes debugging a lot easier because we are able to know which type of error we should fix. So like it said down here, error messages provide feedback to help us diagnose what's wrong. So going forward, we'll see what are different type of errors that the computer will give to us. So I'll send a poll EV as well, like Eugene, and I want you guys to answer some of the poll stuff. Just give me a second, guys. I'll just quickly access my, there we go. Poll. Okay, I'll just type it in. Poll ev.com/508. Oh, no, that's the wrong spelling. EV. Okay. So try to access the second link if you can. Hopefully it's working. Give us a yell if it's not working. So you should be able to see like a question, and you should say what is the first error displayed on the slide. You'll be able to answer. Okay, I see a response, which is good. Means it's probably working. So that's the just for clarification, those are the errors. So error 1 points to a specific error, error 2 points to a specific error, 3 and 4 points to a specific one. I want to see some responses on the other. Yeah, that's good. Okay, we have 6 responses. Okay, let me just take a look at that. Okay, so now looking at the okay, I'll show my responses now. Okay, so now looking at the responses, most of you said incorrect spacing. I hope you guys can see that. I can see it on my screen, but most of you guys say incorrect spacing, which is correct, because you can't add a space next to a variable. It has to be a single sort of string. So you have to sort of add combine it or concatenate it with a underscore. So good job, everyone. I'll go to the next one. Okay. So what do you guys think is the second error displayed on the slide? I've activated question 2. Okay, we have a few responses. Just going back to mine. Okay, we have 3 responses so far. I'll wait for a little bit longer. 5 responses. Okay, we have quite a bit of responses. Okay, that's good. Most of you guys said missing quotation mark. Someone said missing close bracket. Okay, so the correct answer is a missing quotation mark, because it you can't have an open quotation mark and not have a close quotation mark at the end. Python does not recognize that as a proper syntax. So I'll activate question 3. I want you guys to go through and answer question 3. What do you guys think is the error for question 3? Okay, we have a few responses. Okay, we have about 5, 6. Okay, so for question 3, it's a bit misleading because there's another error contained in here, right? And one of you said missing close bracket. That's actually alluding to the next one. So for question 3, the actual error is misspelled variable because we've pointed to the 2 S's here. For the person that said missing close bracket, you're probably right because you thought that we were alluding to the error, but we're actually alluding to the S error. So Python is very cap sensitive. When you put a small s, and Python assigns that value to that variable, and when you put a big S later, Python no longer recognizes this variable because you have not assigned anything to this specific variable because it is cap sensitive. Python recognizes this as a completely different variable. So I've sort of given away the answer to the next one, but I'll just, for the sake of continuation, I'll just add the question 4, and you guys can answer question 4 now. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so most of you would be familiar with the fourth error now. It's a missing close bracket. Like the quotation mark, we can't have an open bracket and not close it at the end. Okay, I will. Okay, so now I'll continue with my presentation. I'll probably deactivate the questions here. Okay, thanks everyone for participating. I'll continue with the presentation. So one other type of error that Python often returns is a syntax error. Syntax error are very common as a beginner because it occurs when we type something wrong into Python. In terms of understanding what a syntax error is, you can imagine it almost like trying to learn English, and a syntax error is a grammatical error. So the most common type of errors for beginners learning English you can imagine would be a grammatical type of error. So we are vulnerable to syntax errors starting off. So computers need everything written precisely or follow very strict syntaxing. Now humans are able to recognize words without proper syntaxing. For example, if the word below you, I'm pretty sure you guys know what I'm trying to write, but because I've misspelled a specific character, you guys would still be able to recognize it, but Python would not recognize that. If you were to return this value, Python will not be able to recognize that this is an apple value. And the reason why is because Python follows very strict syntaxing and logical flows. So computers are totally different to us. We have to do everything by the dot. Okay, so just quick question. I wouldn't do a poll for this one, but what do you guys think is the error here? You guys can type it in the chat. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, we have a no quotation mark. Okay, yeah, Benny, yeah. Yeah, criminal act, yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so a lot of you, for the no quotation marks one, you could, if you wanted to assign this value as an integer, as a string, then you would need a quotation mark. But because we're trying to assign an integer, it's okay. We don't have to have a quotation mark there. But there's a zero division error here where weight is divided by height, exponent of 2, and we know that height is 0, so that will be 0. Python does not recognize a zero flaw division. I think that's what the error is called, a zero flaw division error, or zero division error rather. So you can't divide anything by 0. I'll go forward. Yeah, so it's a zero division error. It's also known as arithmetic error, and Python will return an error message, which is displayed here. So this is what I mean when I say that they will return an error message, which allows us to debug our code easier because we know exactly what type of error we're encountering or what type of error we have put into the code. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so what do we do about errors? Most of the time, being a coder, when you write a code, it's hard for you to debug your own error because to you, everything's perfect because it's your code. So you won't be able to sort of see your own blind spots. But luckily, most coding softwares like Jupyter Lab, which we will use for our worksheets, has built-in features to minimize these errors. So those built-in features are like displaying error messages, and sometimes they have squiggly lines to indicate that there's something wrong with that code. They can't understand that code. So this is quite accurate actually. So junior dev watching senior developer copying the error message pasting on Google. Yeah, a lot of the times you would probably need to copy paste it on Google because there's a forum called Stack Overflow, and that forum allows developers to sort of collude or like to share content. And most of the time it's about debugging errors because in coding we encounter errors a lot. So you'll be able to get a lot of wisdom from the forum at Stack Overflow if you encounter a very difficult error. I'll move on to the next one. So yeah, all you need to know for programming is how to Google things. Okay, so it's breakout time, people. I will enter the form. I'll put the forms, the feedback form link into the chat. So don't forget to fill out the feedback form. That's quite important for our progress going forward. But thanks for listening, everyone. I'll put the feedback form now. I'll stop share. Just give me a second, guys. Okay, feedback form, copy, paste. Here we go. So that's the feedback form. You guys should be able to access that. I'm trying to access it myself. I'll see if it works. Yep, it works. Okay, so it's MSBI Python workshop feedback form. Yeah, that's the end of our workshop. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. Like I